the wickedness of the court, and the encouragement shown to papists. And this was proved, they said, by what had happened in the town of London, where for more than a fortnight such a chill of darkness lay, that no man might behold his neighbour, even across the narrowest street, and where the ice upon the Thames was more than 4 feet thick, and crushing London Bridge in twain. Now to these prophets I paid no heed, believing not that Providence would freeze us for other people's sins, neither seeing how England could for many generations have enjoyed good sunshine, if popery meant frosts and fogs. Besides, why could not Providence settle the business once for all by freezing the Pope himself, even though, according to our view, he were destined to extremes of heat, together with all who followed him? Not to meddle with that subject, being beyond my judgment, let me tell the things I saw, and then you must believe me. The wind, of course, I could not see, not having the powers of a pig, but I could see the laden branches of the great oaks moving, hoping to shake off the load packed and saddled on them. And hereby I may note a thing which someone may explain perhaps in the after ages, when people come to look at things. This is, that in desperate cold all the trees were pulled awry, even though the wind had scattered the snow burden from them. Of some sorts the branches bended downwards like an archway, of other sorts the boughs curved upwards, like a red deer's frontlet. This I know no reason for, but am ready to swear that I saw it. Now when the first of the rain began, and the old familiar softness spread upon the window glass, and ran a little way in channels, though from the coldness of the glass it froze before reaching the bottom, knowing at once the difference from the short sharp thud of snow, we all ran out, and filled our eyes and filled our hearts with gazing. True, the snow was piled up now, all in mountains round us. True, the air was still so cold that our breath froze on the doorway, and the rain was turned to ice wherever it struck anything. Nevertheless, that it was rain there was no denying, as we watched it across black doorways, and could see no sign of white. Mother, who had made up her mind that the farm was not worth having after all those prophecies, and that all of us must starve, and holes be scratched in the snow for us, and no use to put up a tombstone, for our church had been shut up long ago, mother fell upon my breast, and sobbed that I was the cleverest fellow ever born of woman. And this because I had condemned the prophets for a pack of fools, not seeing how business could go on if people stopped to hearken to them. Then Lorna came and glorified me, for I had predicted a change of weather, more to keep their spirits up than with real hope of it. And then came Annie, blushing shyly, as I looked at her, and told her that Winnie would soon have 4 legs now. This referred to some stupid joke made by John Fry or somebody, that in this weather a man had no legs, and a horse had only 2. But as the rain came down upon us from the south-west wind, and we could not have enough of it, even putting our tongues to catch it as little children might do, and beginning to talk of primroses, the very noblest thing of all was to hear and see the gratitude of the poor beasts yet remaining, and the few surviving birds. From the cowhouse lowing came, more than of 50 milking times, moo, and a turn-up noise at the end of every bellow, as if from the very heart of kine. Then the horses in the stables packed as closely as they could stick, at the risk of kicking, to keep the warmth in one another, and their spirits up by discoursing. These began with one accord to lift up their voices, snorting, snaffling, whinnying, and neighing, and trotting to the door to know when they should have work again. To whom, as if in answer, came the feeble bleating of the sheep, what few by dint of greatest care had kept their fleeces on their backs, and their 4 legs under them. Neither was it a trifling thing, let whoso will say the contrary, to behold the ducks and geese marching forth in handsome order from their beds of fern and straw. What a goodly noise they kept, what a flapping of their wings, and a jerking of their tails, as they stood right up, and tried with a whistling in their throats to imitate a cockscrow. And then how daintily they took the wet upon their dusty plumes, and ducked their shoulders to it, and began to dress themselves, and laid their grooved bills on the snow, and dabbled for more ooziness. Lorna had never seen, I dare say, anything like this before, and it was all that we could do to keep her from rushing forth, with only the little lambswool shoes on, and kissing every one of them. "Oh, the dear things! Oh, the dear things!" she kept saying continually. "How wonderfully clever they are! Only look at that one with his foot up, giving orders to the others, John." "And I must give orders to you, my darling," I answered, gazing on her face so brilliant with excitement. "And that is that you come in at once with that worrisome cough of yours, and sit by the fire and warm yourself." "Oh no, John, not for a minute, if you please, good John. I want to see the snow go away, and the green meadows coming forth. And here comes our favourite robin, who has lived in the oven so long, and sung us a song every morning. I must see what he thinks of it." "You will do nothing of the sort," I answered, very shortly, being only too glad of a cause for having her in my arms again. So I caught her up and carried her in, and she looked and smiled so sweetly at me, instead of pouting as I had feared, that I found myself unable to go very fast along the passage. And I set her there in her favourite place, by the sweet scented wood fire, and she paid me porterage without my even asking her; and for all the beauty of the rain I was fain to stay with her, until our Annie came to say that my advice was wanted. Now my advice was never much, as everybody knew quite well, but that was the way they always put it when they wanted me to work for them. And in truth it was time for me to work, not for others but myself, and, as I always thought, for Lorna. For the rain was now coming down in earnest, and the top of the snow being frozen at last, and glazed as hard as china cup, by means of the sun and frost afterwards, all the rain ran right away from the steep inclines, and all the outlets being blocked with ice set up like tables, it threatened to flood everything. Already it was ponding up, like a tide advancing, at the threshold of the door from which we had watched the duck birds, both because great piles of snow trended in that direction, in spite of all our scraping, and also that the gully hole where the water of the chute went out, I mean when it was water, now was choked with lumps of ice, as big as a man's body. For the chute, as we called our little runnel of everlasting water, never known to freeze before, and always ready for any man either to wash his hands or drink, where it spouted from a trough of bark set among the white flintstones, this at last had given in, and its music ceased to lull us as we lay in bed. It was not long before I managed to drain off this threatening flood, by opening the old sluice hole; but I had much harder work to keep the stables and the cow house, and the other sheds from flooding. For we have a sapient practice, and I never saw the contrary round about our parts, I mean, of keeping all rooms underground, so that you step down to them. We say that thus we keep them warmer, both for cattle and for men, in the time of winter, and cooler in the summer time. This I will not contradict, though having my own opinion; but it seems to me to be a relic of the time when people in the western countries lived in caves beneath the ground, and blocked the mouths with neat skins. Let that question still abide, for men who study ancient times to inform me, if they will. All I know is, that now we had no blessings for the system. If, after all their cold and starving, our weak cattle now should have to stand up to their knees in water, it would be certain death to them, and we had lost enough already to make us poor for a long time, not to speak of our kind love for them. And I do assure you, I loved some horses, and even some cows for that matter, as if they had been my blood relations, knowing, as I did, their virtues. And some of these were lost to us, and I could not bear to think of them. Therefore I worked hard all night to try and save the rest of them. End of chapter 45. Read by Landy in Sydney, Australia, October 2008.